This is a part of these biblical stories of angels and devils, and that's what they're really talking about. They're talking about these interdimensional beings, and the darkest theory.
God doesn't.
To use that as a guidebook for life. Now this is crazy. Why was the Book of Enoch removed from the Bible? When we look at various parts of the New Testament, Enoch seems to be in play. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text attributed to the great-grandfather of Noah, has long captivated scholars and spiritual seekers due to its profound mystical content. While the book is not part of the canonical Bible, offers a window into early Jewish understandings of the divine and the supernatural. The book holds critical insights into the development of early Jewish thought, the formation of Christian doctrines, and the apocalyptic traditions that would later influence much of Western religious philosophy. On the famous Joe Rogan Experience, the book has been a subject of discussion several times. One episode even dealt with how scientists finally opened the Book of Enoch and what happened next. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get straight to it. Right off the bat, the Book of Enoch is far from ordinary. Back in 2019, Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock, a researcher and author known for exploring ancient civilizations and alternative histories, sat down together and delved into its themes, especially its apocalyptic visions and the fall of the Watchers or fallen angels. Rogan noted how the Book of Enoch connects to the broader narrative of human history, but one can't help but wonder why it was excluded from the biblical canon and what might have happened if it had been accepted. As noted earlier, the book is unusual. It claims that the Watchers, a group of angelic beings who descended to Earth, married human women, and fathered a hybrid race of giants known as Nephilim. These beings, according to the text, corrupted humanity and taught forbidden knowledge, such as weapon-making, cosmetics, astrology, and sorcery. Even more puzzling is the vivid depiction of Enoch's celestial journey, where he is taken into the heavens and shown the intricate workings of creation, including strange portals that govern natural phenomena. These themes have led some to speculate whether the Book of Enoch is a metaphor, an allegory, or even a record of something extraordinary. Back in the 4th century A.D., religious leaders across Christendom debated which texts should be included in what we now recognize as the Bible. The decision-making began to solidify at the Council of Nicaea in 325 A.D. and continued through later councils like Hippo in 393 A.D. and Carthage in 397 A.D., which formalized the canon of the Old and New Testaments. These councils emphasized unity and consistency across the growing Christian world. Numerous texts, including the Book of Enoch and the Gospel of Thomas, were excluded and labeled apocryphal. Still, the Book of Enoch's influence persisted. Early Christian figures like Tertullian and Origen referenced and admired it, and it remained canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, where it still holds a revered place today. Archaeological discoveries such as the Dead Sea Scrolls have reignited interest in texts like the Book of Enoch, showing that they were widely read and respected in certain Jewish communities before the time of Christ. Modern scholarship is now better equipped to trace how and why texts like Enoch fell out of favor, shedding light on the political and cultural shifts in the early church. The Book of Enoch stands as one of the most enigmatic and controversial texts in religious history, highly influential in both Judaism and Christianity, while simultaneously shunned by mainstream traditions. It was especially prominent during the Second Temple period, as shown by its strong representation in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Today, its canonical acceptance is limited, notably preserved by the Beta Israel Jewish community of Ethiopia. This tension, its profound influence versus its rejection, raises fascinating questions about its place in religious history. Jewish rejection of Enoch was primarily theological, as Rabbinic Judaism deemed it inconsistent with the Torah, particularly its apocalyptic narratives and elaborate angelology. For instance, one passage introduces the angel Phanuel, who oversees repentance and eternal life, a concept conflicting with traditional Jewish teachings. The idea that angels could rebel against God and corrupt creation, as described with the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim, was seen as bordering on blasphemy. Such notions clash with Jewish monotheism, where divine sovereignty was absolute and angels were mere messengers incapable of moral deviation. Moreover, portions of Enoch repurpose or expand upon Torah material, such as 1 Enoch 1 drawing heavily from Deuteronomy 33, which led accusations that it was derivative rather than divinely inspired. Despite this, its influence remained undeniable. In Christianity, the Book of Enoch was initially embraced by early theologians, but by the 5th century it was largely excluded, surviving mainly in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. The Church rejected it for similar reasons: speculative cosmology, graphic depictions of fallen angels, and potential to foster heretical interpretations. The early Church sought to emphasize Christ-centered teachings of grace and redemption, whereas Enoch was steeped in visions of divine retribution and cosmic warfare. Modern discoveries like the Dead Sea Scrolls allow scholars to reevaluate its significance, noting its influence on apocalyptic literature and early Christian eschatology. Was its exclusion a historical accident or a deliberate attempt to streamline doctrine? Perhaps its descriptions of angelic rebellions and celestial hierarchies posed too many challenges to the developing orthodoxies of Judaism and Christianity alike. As the scrolls continue to reveal more about Second Temple Judaism, the Book of Enoch provokes debate, leaving us to wonder what deeper truths might lie hidden in its cryptic verses. Historically, the Book of Enoch survives in fragments across many languages, with its most complete early manuscripts preserved in Guizi, the liturgical language of Ethiopia. These manuscripts fall into two families, as categorized by Robert Henry Charles in his 1906 edition. Family Alpha, consisting of older and more faithful versions closely aligned with Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek renditions, and Family Beta, which represents more recent edited texts. Notable manuscripts are housed in institutions like the British Museum, the Bodleian Library, and the Vatican, reflecting centuries of preservation and geographic spread. Beyond the Ethiopic tradition, fragments survive in Aramaic, Greek, Coptic, Latin, and Syriac. Aramaic fragments were uncovered in Qumran's cave, for in the mid-20th century, Greek passages appear in works like the Chronographia Universalis and the Codex Panapolitanus, and rare fragments in Coptic, Latin, and Syriac further attest to its wide influence across cultures. Though incomplete, these remnants provide invaluable insight into the text's transmission and significance in ancient and medieval religious thought. The Book of Enoch itself is a composite text reflecting a dynamic amalgamation of Jewish apocalyptic traditions spanning centuries. Ephraim Isaac, who edited and translated for the Old Testament pseudepigrapha, asserts that it is the work of multiple writers over different periods, with sections dated from around 200 BC to approximately 160 AD. Similarly, George W. Nicholsburg describes the Book of Enoch as a compilation of Jewish apocalyptic traditions from the last 3 centuries BC. Paleographic studies of fragments discovered in the Qumran caves attribute the oldest sections, particularly the Book of the Watchers, to between 200 and 150 BC, though the text itself likely originated as early as the 3rd century BC. The astronomical book also reflects a similar timeline. Scholar David Jackson has suggested that there was an Enochic Judaism, a distinctive strain of Jewish tradition that shaped the ideology of the Qumran community, while scholar Margaret Barker argues that this tradition's roots trace back to the First Temple period. Enochic Judaism features unique theological elements regarding the origins of evil, teaching that angels who mated with human women brought evil into the world. This stands in contrast to the Mosaic Covenant, as Enochic texts lack traditional Torah elements, such as Sabbath observance and circumcision, instead emphasizing a strong eschatological focus on the end of days and divine retribution over earthly rewards. Enochic Judaism also critiques the Second Temple sacrificial system as impure, envisions heaven as a divine court with angels as courtiers, favors a solar calendar over the lunar one used in temple rituals, and places significant importance on angelology and the afterlife, creating a framework that diverged sharply from mainstream Judaism. Classical rabbinic literature is notably silent on Enoch and his associated texts, likely due to polemics against Enochic traditions. Despite this, the Book of Enoch holds great importance in the development of Jewish mysticism. Renowned scholar Gershom Scholem noted that the foundations of later Merkabah mysticism, which explores esoteric visions of divine chariots and celestial realms, are deeply rooted in the earlier traditions epitomized by the Book of Enoch. One pivotal example is 1 Enoch 14, which provides a vivid depiction of the throne of God, profoundly influencing mystical thought. The influence of Enoch also extended beyond Judaism into early Christian theology, most clearly in the New Testament's Epistle of Jude, which directly quotes the Book of the Watchers, emphasizing divine judgment and accountability for ungodliness. The text also shaped early Christian doctrines regarding the Messiah, the concept of the Son of Man, the nature of the Messianic kingdom, demonology, resurrection, and eschatology. Early church fathers such as Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, and Origen cited the book both favorably and critically, while Byzantine scholars like George Enceladus preserved excerpts. Though eventually deemed apocryphal, its impact remained palpable across centuries. Over time, however, the text all but disappeared, presumed lost outside of Ethiopia until the 17th century, when reports of an Ethiopic version surfaced. Sir Walter Raleigh mentioned an account of a portion of Enoch discovered in Sheba during the 1st century, but it gained wider traction when James Bruce, a Scottish traveler, returned from Ethiopia in 1773 with 3 copies of the Gwizi text. These manuscripts, housed in major European libraries, remained largely unexamined until the 19th century, when scholars like Richard Lawrence produced the first English translations. Later, the translations and commentaries of R.H. Charles in the late 19th and early 20th centuries became authoritative references. The discovery of Aramaic fragments of 1 Enoch among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1950s was another breakthrough, confirming the text's antiquity and shedding light on its original composition. Since then, interest has resurged, with modern translations and commentaries by scholars such as Michael Knibb and George W. Nicholsburg enriching academic discourse. Many now consider Enochic literature as representing an independent, non-Mosaic tradition within Second Temple Judaism, challenging conventional narratives of Jewish theological development. What is certain is that the Book of Enoch enjoys enduring theological and literary significance. At its core, the book addresses the fall of the Watchers, angels sent to observe humanity whose rebellion corrupted both mankind and the heavens. Led by their chief angel, Semjaza, they descended to earth, took human wives, and fathered the Nephilim, giants whose monstrous size and gluttony devastated the earth. These fallen angels further disrupted divine order by teaching forbidden knowledge, including metallurgy, sorcery, astrology, and cosmetics, contributing to humanity's moral decay. Their transgression provoked God's judgment, and archangels such as Michael, Raphael, Uriel, and Gabriel were sent to intervene, ensuring the punishment of both the Watchers and their offspring. The Nephilim were destroyed, their souls bound to the earth. While the Watchers were imprisoned, their corrupting knowledge cut off. The Book of the Watchers also depicts Enoch's heavenly journeys, in which he witnesses divine judgment against the fallen. Despite Enoch's intercession, God's verdict is final, and the punishment irreversible. The narrative also foreshadows the destruction of the earth by a great deluge, paralleling the Noah story, with Uriel sent to warn Noah of the impending flood. Alongside this, the text introduces a concept of a final judgment, where the wicked are destroyed and the righteous rewarded, a vision that foreshadows later Christian eschatology. Importantly, the Book of Enoch is not a single unified work, but a compilation of traditions woven together over centuries. Its 5 major sections, ranging from the Watchers to Enoch's celestial visions to revelations about the structure of the universe, were likely independent works later redacted into the version we know today. Chapters 37 to 71, known as the Book of Parables, represent a later edition, expanding upon earlier themes of a more refined eschatology. Unlike the Watchers, which focuses on the punishment of angels, the parables extend final judgment to corrupt earthly kings. At the center of these parables is the figure of the Son of Man, also called the Righteous One, the Chosen One, and Messiah, seated on the throne of glory, preside over the final judgment. Notably, this is the earliest known use of the title Son of Man in Jewish literature, predating its later adoption in Christian texts, a shocking revelation that underscores the text's profound impact. Scholars of Enoch have interpreted the Son of Man figure in different ways. Some, like R.H. Charles, describe him as a supernatural being, a messianic judge of the world endowed with pre-existence and universal dominion, even seated upon God's throne. This portrayal of the Son of Man as a pre-existent divine figure with cosmic authority has often been read as a reflection of Christian theological influence, particularly given its parallels to early Christian views about the nature of Christ. However, not all scholars agree with this interpretation. Emil G. Hirsch, for example, argued that the use of Son of Man in the Book of Parables does not necessarily point to a supernatural Messiah, but rather reflect a broader apocalyptic tradition that emphasized divine judgment and the coming of a righteous ruler. Others, such as Daryl D. Hannah, suggest that some sections of the parables, especially those about Noah and the judgment of the wicked, may be later additions influenced by older Noah-focused apocryphal writings. Certain passages even appear to reference historical figures, such as Herod the Great, often dated around 4 BC, which complicates the dating of the text. Additionally, chapters 70 to 71 are considered by many to be later revisions due to stylistic differences and narrative shifts from third person to first person. The Book of Parables itself is divided into 3 main sections, each presenting a different dimension of the eschatological vision. The first parable announces the coming judgment of the wicked and the vindication of the righteous, introducing the 4 archangels who hold pivotal roles in the heavenly hierarchy. The second parable elaborates on the fate of apostates and the renewal of the world through the establishment of a new heaven and earth, emphasizing the Son of Man's role in executing judgment upon earthly kings and rulers. The third parable focuses on the righteous judgment of kings, the punishment of fallen angels, and the ultimate purification of the world, while also foretelling Noah's flood and the preservation of his family. The concluding chapters describe Enoch's final ascent into heaven, portraying him as the exalted representative of the righteous and the intermediary between the divine and human realms. These complex layers, combined with its eschatological focus and questions of justice and divine authority, have made the parables a crucial piece of apocalyptic literature, deeply influencing both Jewish thought and early Christian theology. Another major segment of the Book of Enoch is the astronomical book, which explores celestial mechanics, divine knowledge, and the order of time. Fragments of this work were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran in the 20th century and are believed to have been written as early as the 3rd century BC. This section introduces a detailed solar calendar of 364 days, divided into 4 seasons of 91 days each. Each season consists of 3 months of 30 days, with an additional day added at the end of the 3rd month. This solar calendar, strictly adhered to by the Dead Sea sect, differed sharply from the lunar-based calendar used in Jerusalem, preventing the sect from celebrating festivals on the same days as a temple. The calendar aligned the movement of heavenly bodies with divine intent, drawing direct connections to the creation narrative in Genesis. Each year began on a Wednesday, the day on which, according to Genesis, the heavenly bodies were created, marking it as a sacred symbol of divine order. Scholars have long debated how this 364-day system reconciled with the actual solar year. Its precision offered the sect a stable and predictable rhythm of life, where each day always corresponded to the same weekday year after year. Alongside the astronomical book, Enoch also contains a series of dream visions, the most famous being the Book of Dream Visions, also known as the Animal Apocalypse. This allegorical work retells the history of Israel from the flood of Noah to the coming of the Messianic kingdom through vivid symbolic imagery in which people and nations are represented by animals. For example, Noah is depicted as a white bull, while Adam and his descendants are symbolized by other bulls, and Cain appears as a black calf. Nations and empires interacting with Israel are portrayed as animals of different colors, shapes, and natures, each reflecting their spiritual and moral condition. This rich symbolic language allows the text to reinterpret Israel's history as part of a larger cosmic drama, offering both hope for divine vindication and warnings of judgment. Or Abel represents significant biblical figures and their moral choices. The history of Israel is recounted through the allegory of sheep and other animals, with the Lord of the sheep representing God. The allegorical animals are placed within a framework of divine judgment, where the sins of the people, represented by the fallen angels, lead to their eventual punishment. The allegories continue with the portrayal of Israel's tumultuous history from the Exodus to the Maccabean Revolt, encapsulating the rise and fall of nations and the challenges faced by the Israelites. The visionary account includes the creation of the Temple of Solomon, the division of Israel into northern and southern kingdoms, and the eventual destruction of Jerusalem. Throughout this narrative, the fate of the Israelites is entwined with their spiritual fidelity or infidelity to God. The animal apocalypse culminates in a vision of a new Jerusalem, where the righteous are resurrected and the Messiah arrives to bring salvation to the faithful. This eschatological vision provides a hopeful ending to the story, where divine justice is finally realized and the righteous are rewarded. However, the book also serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of turning away from divine law, illustrating how Israel's repeated cycles of sin and redemption mirror the larger cosmic battle between good and evil. Another important section within the Book of Enoch, the Epistle of Enoch, combines prophecy, moral teachings, and a cosmic view of righteousness and sin. Central to this text is the Apocalypse of Weeks, a historical framework that divides time into 10 symbolic weeks, each corresponding to key events or eras. The final week predicts a judgment and restoration of the world, culminating in the establishment of a new heaven and the triumph of righteousness. Alongside this prophetic structure, the exhortation section addresses moral living, focusing on the need for righteousness in preparation for the final judgment. The main body of the epistle contrasts the fates of the righteous and the wicked. It critiques the societal elite, focusing on their oppression of the righteous. The epistle also includes the birth of Noah, portraying him as a divinely chosen figure destined to cleanse the world through the flood. The text concludes with a stark division between light and darkness, with darkness symbolizing the eternal separation of the righteous and the wicked. Rich in symbolic names for angels, including the fallen ones like Azazel, the Epistle of Enoch reflects the cosmic struggle between good and evil. But how does all of this matter to us today? From a historical perspective, what do scholars say about the Book of Enoch? Until recently, scholars largely focus on deciphering the meanings and messages of the text as it would have been understood by its early audiences, particularly in relation to the religious, social, and political conditions of the time. Despite its exclusion from most canonical scriptures, 1 Enoch has retained a significant theological presence, especially within the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. In recent years, however, the significance of Enochic studies has expanded beyond historical and textual analysis, with scholars increasingly turning to the Book of Enoch to address contemporary theological issues. Perhaps most shocking of all is the mention of the Son of Man in 1 Enoch. The Son of Man is depicted as a heavenly figure who will come to judge the earth and establish righteousness. This apocalyptic figure has been the subject of much scholarly debate, particularly regarding his relationship to other messianic figures in Jewish and Christian traditions. The Son of Man in 1 Enoch is often seen as a precursor to the Christological figure of Jesus in the New Testament, and modern scholars continue to explore how the Enochic understanding of the Son of Man shapes theological discussions about messianism and the role of Christ in salvation history. Notable podcaster and internet personality Joe Rogan has shown a keen interest in the book's mysterious nature and connections to ancient religious and historical narratives, though he often takes a skeptical or exploratory approach to such discussions. For example, in a podcast episode with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, the conversation touched on ancient civilizations and esoteric texts like the Book of Enoch, linking them to advanced knowledge possibly predating modern humanity. Rogan expressed fascination with how these texts might intersect with theories of ancient wisdom and lost technologies. In another discussion, Rogan mentioned the Book of Enoch as an example of texts excluded from the Bible, which adds an intriguing layer to debates about why certain writings were canonized while others were not. But what if this were not the case? What if the book had been considered part of the Christian canon? Had that been the case, Christianity could have evolved in radically different ways, both theologically and historically. The text depiction of the Son of Man as a heavenly judge might have reshaped early Christology, presenting Jesus as an explicitly cosmic figure central to the final judgment and the restoration of righteousness. Its themes of angelology, particularly the rebellion of the Watchers and their imparting of forbidden knowledge, could have expanded Christian theology about angels, demons, and the origins of sin, resulting in a more metaphysical focus on spiritual warfare and the cosmic battle between good and evil. This emphasis might have led to apocalyptic themes dominating Christian worship, liturgy, and moral teachings, while fostering an urgent, mystically charged view of salvation. The exclusion of 1 Enoch allowed the Church to develop a streamlined theology centered on the life and resurrection of Christ without the complex angelology and apocalyptic imagery. Christianity became more focused on individual redemption and the personal relationship with Jesus. The Church's institutional structure emphasized unity and doctrinal orthodoxy, minimizing alternative theological interpretations. Had 1 Enoch been included, Christianity might have leaned toward a more mystical and fragmented tradition with greater openness to Gnostic and apocalyptic movements. This alternate trajectory might have shaped Christian art, literature, and culture to highlight angelic hierarchies and cosmic struggles, influencing both historical theology and modern Christian identity in profound and unpredictable ways. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss the video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.